This is Kurtop with you, and these are 100 traces of ancient civilizations that we haven't noticed. Altai mummy, Altai, Papyrus burial mounds. Thanks to the ice, the skin of a person from about 2,500 years ago was preserved, along with nearly vanished tattoos on it. They have been studied again. Scientists examined the images under different lighting, studied the pigments, and reproduced the techniques on models. Something unexpected was revealed. The tattoos were made by more than one hand. On the right arm, there are deer and large cats, drawn with the finest lines and accurate anatomy. This is the work of an experienced master. On the left, the geometry is simpler and more uneven. Most likely, this is the work of an apprentice. This is the first convincing case where several artists are identified on one body. The pigment is ordinary soot. The tools are a single needle for outlining and a comb, several needles on a bar, for quickly making dots and shading. Such a combination explains the depth and texture of the lines under a microscope. The incisions made during mummification sometimes cut through the designs. This means they weren't preserved for ritual purposes. Tattoos were a part of everyday life, a sign of status belonging to a group or an individual. The lines on the skin reveal the structure of the Iron Age community. There are masters, there are apprentices, and there is a demand for complex body ornamentation that was important during life, not after death. A book with a surprise, a Bible with a secret compartment for a firearm, is a unique combination of religious text and the art of weaponry. This unusual artifact was made for the Venetian Doge Francesco Morosini in the 17th century. The secret mechanism allowed a miniature to be hidden, a firearm device inside the book, and the silk bookmark served as the trigger. It's hard to say whether Morosini used this Bible for its intended purpose, but he was known for his sharp mind and caution, which may have contributed to his long life. The Doge lived to be 74 years old, which was quite a respectable age for that time. This Bible combined the engineering craftsmanship of the era and shows how powerful people of that time sought to combine means of self-defense with everyday objects. Tutankhamun's folding camp bed. In a recently published report by Japanese researchers, it is stated that the unique folding bed from Pharaoh Tutankhamun's tomb represents a true technological breakthrough of its time. This exclusive folding bed, discovered in 1922 by Howard Carter, impresses with its design. It can fold into a Z shape. Architect Naoki Nishimoto, who specializes in the history of furniture, emphasizes its uniqueness. And while other simpler models of folding beds have been discovered, this 3-section bed is something special. Nishimoto claims that the craftsman who created this piece demonstrated a true engineering marvel. Even the legs of the bed, shaped like lion's paws, are equipped with complex hinges, which allowed them to be folded. These details were most likely created through a process of trial and error, which indicates the profound intelligence and ingenuity of the craftsman. Despite the technological advancement of the bed, it is unlikely that the young pharaoh Tutankhamun actually used it in practice, as his health and lifestyle did not allow for it. As scientists suggest, this bed was part of the burial treasure, symbolizing eternal comfort in the afterlife. Coins with the Kraken. These silver coins were minted in Syracuse, one of the most influential cities of ancient Greece. The octopus on these coins was the symbol of the city, which lived by the sea, controlled trade routes, and maintained a strong fleet. Syracuse controlled trade routes, ports, and the fleet, and the sea was the main source of their wealth and power. The coins were minted with exceptional attention to detail. Each tentacle is detailed separately, the composition is balanced, and the image is adapted to the shape of the blank. This speaks not only of artistic culture, but also of a political message. Money was meant to inspire respect and trust. Such coins were actively circulated outside Sicily, spreading the city's symbols far beyond its borders. The octopus also had mythological associations, a creature capable of holding, grasping, and controlling. For a maritime power, it was a vivid image of influence. The oldest book in Europe. In January 1962, during excavations near the village of Derveni, Greek archaeologists discovered an ancient papyrus in the funeral pyre of a noble Macedonian. This scroll, dated to around 340 to 320 BC, became the first one found on the territory of Macedonia. Since the manuscript is of a literary nature, UNESCO recognized it as the oldest known book in Europe. The discovered scroll was named the Derveni Papyrus, after the place where it was found. It contains reflections on religious rituals related to the fate of the soul after death and discussions about a lost poetic text attributed to the legendary Orpheus, the singer and musician from Greek myths. Researchers believe that the unknown author belonged to the circle of followers of the philosopher Anaxagoras and wrote for the Derveni Orphism, a special religious movement, presumably monotheistic and focused on the purification of the soul. The fire from the funeral pyre preserved the papyrus fragments from damp soil, but also seriously damaged them. Scientists managed to extract about 266 charred pieces and later assemble them into 26 columns of text without the lower halves of the lines. A full publication of the deciphered manuscript appeared only half a century later. Proof of cannibalism. The next story will be a bit creepy, but it's completely real. Let's dive into ancient history 1.5 million years ago and get ready to learn an amazing story about cannibalism among ancient humans. Scientists discovered traces on an ancient bone that looked like someone ate a hominin's leg. And what's most surprising is that the culprit apparently was not a wild animal, but another intelligent being. This is the oldest evidence of cannibalism. The bone was found in Kenya. It belonged to an unknown human relative who lived here in ancient times. Scientists from the Smithsonian Institution conducted a thorough analysis of this ancient crime using 3D technology. Although our ancestors occupied a high position in the food chain, sometimes they became victims of other animals. But unfortunately, cases of cannibalism among them were not that rare. Researchers initially expected to find traces of wild animal teeth, but instead they discovered clear, man-made cuts. Often, such traces indicated ritual burials or the removal of ornaments from bones. But in this case, everything points to the bone being processed for food. It is difficult to state this with absolute certainty, since the bones of ancient people could have been processed for different purposes, and we might be mistaken in our interpretation. This finding gives reason to believe that hominins could very well have been cannibals as far back as 1.5 million years ago. It's a bit scary, isn't it? But that's our history. The first mummy for a long time, it was believed. The first mummy. Mummification appeared in Egypt only during the era of the pharaohs, around 2600 BC, along with the pyramids and an established religion. However, in the burials of the pre-dynastic period dated to 4,500 to 3,500 BC, archaeologists discovered bodies preserved by artificial means. These findings have been recorded in the regions of Badari and Upper Egypt, and they do not fit the explanation of natural mummification by sand. Analysis of the tissues showed the presence of resins, vegetable oils, and antiseptic substances that were deliberately applied to the body before burial. In 2014, chemical analysis confirmed that the composition of these mixtures is almost identical in function to those that would be used in classical mummification 1,500 to 2,000 years later. This means that people were experimenting with body preservation long before the appearance of priests, texts, and religious canons. It is also important that such burials are not unique. Traces of body treatment have been found in several burial sites, which indicates a repeated practice rather than an exception. The body is placed in a specific position, wrapped in cloth and treated with substances that slow down decomposition. All of this was done during a period when Egypt was not yet a state and did not have centralized authority. These findings show that the idea of preserving the body arose as a practical action, not as a regional dogma. Later, a complex system of beliefs about the soul, judgment, and the afterlife developed around this practice. But initially, mummification was an experiment that turned out to be so important, it lasted for thousands of years and became one of the foundations of Egyptian civilization. The Great Bell of Damazzedi is considered the largest bell ever made. It was cast in 1484 by order of the King of Myanmar, Damazzedi, and installed at the famous Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon, one of the most sacred places for Buddhists in the country. According to historical records, the bell weighed over 290 tons, making it a record holder among such structures. However, the fate of the bell turned out to be tragic. In 1608, the Portuguese mercenary and adventurer Felipe de Brito captured Yangon and decided to take the bell away to melt it down for weapons. While moving it across the Bago River, he misjudged the structure's weight. The bell sank when the barge capsized. Since then, it has never been found, despite numerous attempts. Today, the Great Bell of Damazidi remains part of the legends and national pride of Myanmar. Its story is a reminder of how culture, spirituality, and greed can intertwine in a single artifact, the fate of which remains a mystery to this day. The oldest fortresses on the planet. Traditionally, we thought that complex defensive structures appeared only with the development of agriculture. But now, things are different. In Siberia, 10 hunter-gatherer fortifications have been found, some of which are up to 8,000 years old. These settlements, located on riverbanks, were protected by earthworks, ramparts, and wooden palisades. The ancient inhabitants of this area not only hunted and fished, but also created ceramic vessels for storing food. Their ability to build serious fortifications testifies to the incredible complexity of their lives. Many believe that permanent settlements with fortifications appeared in agricultural societies, but this discovery disproves that theory. It turns out that even hunter-gatherers could create complex societies. The presence of abundant resources in the Siberian taiga likely played a key role in the emergence of these settlements. These fortifications were possibly used to control and efficiently utilize local resources. A recipe from the grave. Czech scientists have recreated Celtic beer based on studies of pollen from an ancient Celtic burial in Moravia. Beer has deep roots, with the earliest traces going back to the Middle East, where breweries appeared about 5,500 years ago. However, its full history still remains a mystery. Excavations carried out in 2020 to 2021 opened new horizons in understanding ancient cultures, revealing the lives and traditions of pre-Celtic peoples. Modern analyses of pollen found at this site have revealed traces of millet and other grasses used by the Celts to make beer. Scientists suggest that some ingredients, such as clover, may have served as sweeteners for the drink, indicating complex taste preferences and technologies of ancient times. The created Tauri ale has unique flavors, different from modern varieties, highlighting the role of various herbs and spices in its production. The absence of hops is an interesting aspect of the beer's flavor profile, making it similar to medieval recipes. Beer, being one of the oldest beverages of humanity, continues to connect people across cultures and centuries. The Doomsday Glacier, Thwaites Glacier, is located in West Antarctica. Its area is comparable to that of Great Britain, and it holds a massive amount of ice directly linked to global sea levels. It is called the Doomsday Glacier because of the role it plays in the stability of the entire West Antarctic ice sheet. For a long time, it was believed that the main threat was melting from below. A warm ocean current erodes the glacier where it meets the seafloor, gradually weakening its grip. But satellite data from recent years has revealed another process developing in parallel. Long cracks have begun to form inside the glacier. We're not talking about surface fractures, but about a system of internal ruptures stretching for dozens of kilometers. Their total length has more than doubled in a short period of time. These cracks are spreading in zones of maximum stress, where the ice loses its structural integrity. The destruction is happening not at the edge, but from within the mass. This changes the behavior of the glacier. Instead of slowly sliding, it starts to lose stability in fragments. The shelf part, which used to serve as a support and held back the movement of ice into the ocean, is gradually weakening. The volume of ice associated with Thwaites is equivalent to a global sea level rise of about 65 centimeters, but its significance goes beyond just one number. It holds back neighboring ice basins. If it loses stability, they will start moving too, increasing the total contribution to several meters. Satellite observations record the acceleration of ice flow and changes in its geometry. Models show that the process could enter an irreversible phase within a few decades. The exact timing is unknown, but the dynamics themselves have already been recorded and confirmed by independent measurements.
Кости в стене.
At first, I thought it was fake. Seriously, who nowadays would find bones in their own wall? But the story is real. England, A woman is renovating her house. She opens up the wall, and there, among the old plaster and bricks, are real human bones, a skull, vertebrae. The police arrive and confirm that these are indeed human remains, real ones. From around the 19th century, the exact age hasn't been determined yet, and that's when things start to feel a bit unsettling, because you realize, between ordinary life and death, there's literally just a layer of wallpaper. Everything we're used to thinking of as the past isn't somewhere underground anymore. It's right here, inside the house. I don't know how these bones ended up in the wall. Maybe it's a crime, maybe it's some old burial ritual. But the fact remains, in a real house where someone slept, ate, and lived, there were human remains lying behind the wall. Ancient spa complex. In Pompeii, the ancient Roman city at the foot of Vesuvius, archaeologists discovered a luxurious residence that, in their opinion, belonged to one of the influential citizens. The owner, according to researchers, used this house not only for receptions and entertainment, but also to demonstrate high status or political support during elections. The complex contained thermal baths designed for about 30 people who could move between the caldarium, the hot room, the tepidarium, the warm room, and the frigidarium. The cold room in the complex, linked to the inner courtyard, was especially impressive. The luxurious banquet hall is decorated with frescoes inspired by the Trojan War, including a scene of the meeting between Helen and Paris. The hall itself was nicknamed the Black Room because of its dark walls, which concealed the soot from burning oil lamps. A staircase leads from the hall to the upper floor, and charcoal drawings of gladiator pairs and a stylized phallus remain on the arches. According to scholars, such details emphasize the social status of the owner, turning the house into a kind of stage for the public. Guests could relax in the baths after feasts, and the artistic details created the effect of being present in a mythological setting. Pickle mummy. Researchers discovered that in the mummy known as the Mysterious Lady, a small fetus had been preserved for more than 2,000 years. Their discovery is based on CT scan data and was published in the journal Archaeological Science. The Mysterious Lady is not just a mummy. She was pregnant at the time of her death and was part of the Thebes community. Her age at the time of death is estimated to be between 20 and 30 years, and the fetus was between 26 and 30 weeks old. And this is the only known case of a pregnant mummy that underwent the mummification process. Amazingly, no one knew about the fetus in her womb until last summer. A previous study using X-rays did not detect it because its bones were mineralized. It turned out that the Mysterious Lady did not die during childbirth. Her body was treated with natron, a type of salt that dries out the body and acts as a disinfectant. And the fetus was left untouched by those who mummified the body, which allowed the womb to remain in perfect condition. Thanks to this, researchers discovered that the blood in the fetus became more acidic as the levels of ammonia and formic acid increased, which led to the mineralization of the bones. And since the womb remained hermetically sealed, the fetus was essentially pickled, preserved for more than 2,000 years. However, the question remains, why did the embalmers leave the fetus inside the body when all the other organs were removed? Cybele on a chariot. A medallion depicting Cybele on a chariot dated to the 2nd century BC is a unique work of art from the Greco-Bactrian kingdom. This kingdom arose in a region that is now part of modern Afghanistan and was formed by Greek conquerors after Alexander the Great. Cybele, the mother goddess of nature and fertility, was a cult figure in several ancient religions, and her depiction on the medallion speaks to the blending of cultures and religious practices in the Greco-Bactrian kingdom. On the medallion, Cybele is depicted driving a chariot drawn by lions, symbolizing her dominant role in nature and the cosmos. Boats for eternity. Funerary boats appeared in Egypt as early as the 4th millennium BC, 1,000 years before the first dynasties. The earliest finds have been recorded in Abydos and Hierakonpolis, where real wooden boats up to 20 meters long were discovered next to elite burials, laid in specially dug pits. They were oriented along the course of the Nile, which indicates a deliberate ritual rather than random placement. In Abydos, archaeologists found more than a dozen boat burials located next to the tombs of proto-dynastic rulers. Some boats were dismantled before burial, while others were used during life. They show traces of repairs, wear, and paint. This means the item in the tomb wasn't just a symbol, but an object directly tied to the owner's status. In a society where the Nile was the main transportation artery, a boat meant control over movement, trade, and people. Images of boats also appear widely on pre-dynastic pottery. The same type of hull, high prow, elongated shape. These motifs are found simultaneously in different regions, which indicates a widespread tradition rather than a local cult. During this time, the boat symbolizes power and belonging to the elite, not just transportation. Later, this idea doesn't disappear, but is scaled up. The solar boats of the pharaohs near the pyramids are not a new invention, but rather the development of a much older ritual. Funerary boats capture the moment when power and status begin to be seen as something that should be preserved even after death. And for this, society is willing to spend resources on things that have no practical value for the living. Incredible jewelry craftsmanship. On the west coast of Norway, in Vestland County, during the excavation of a burial mound, archaeologist Soren Deinhoff found an object in the 1990s that has only been seen about 20 times in all of Scandinavia. A tiny gold pendant from the Roman period around the year 200 AD. It is 2 centimeters in diameter and weighs a few grams. But the craftsmanship is finer than a human hair. In Rome, such items were worn as earrings. In the north, they were turned into pendants. The burial mound stood out because of its size and location. A rich burial mound without cremation was found atop the ridge. Analysis of the soil and accompanying finds, such as glass beads and metal belts, confirmed that this was an elite female burial. The next day, Deinhoff unearthed 2 more silver fibulae. These are brooches or pins that held dresses on the shoulders. Similar pendants are more commonly found in northern Germany and on the Danish islands. In Norway, there are only 3 of them. Scientists suggest that the ornament arrived through a marriage alliance between the noble families of southern Scandinavia and the Western Fjord region. Modern jewelers admit that it is possible to replicate the work, but it would take years of training and more gold to compensate for the waste.
Самый молодой
During an ordinary family walk in Tel Azika, Israel, 3-year-old Ziv Nitza accidentally made an archaeological discovery. She found an ancient scarab about 3,800 years old. This place is known as the site of the biblical battle between David and Goliath. The discovery quickly drew the Israel Antiquities Authority's attention, which confirmed the artifact's authenticity and uniqueness. It turned out that this was not just a stone, but an ancient seal in the shape of a scarab, a symbol of renewal and rebirth in Egyptian culture, which the Canaanites used as an amulet or seal. According to researchers, the scarab is connected to the Canaanite civilization, a people who inhabited the lands of the Levant during the Bronze Age. Such items reflected the beliefs, status, and close cultural ties of Canaan with Egypt. The deepest borehole. In China, they want to reach rocks from the Cretaceous period, which are 140 million years old. The task is ambitious. They plan to drill through 10 layers of earth and reach a depth of 11,000 meters, which will be a national record. Work started in May of this year. While in Russia they want to resume work on the Kola Super Deep borehole, China is already actively drilling. Let me remind you that the Soviet Kola borehole project, although it was not completed, made an important scientific discovery and planned to drill the Earth to a depth of more than 15,000 meters. Work on the Kola Peninsula began in 1970 and continued for 2 decades. At a depth of 7 kilometers, the team had to face difficulties. Layered rocks would get stuck in the equipment. Despite this, they managed to reach the final depth of 12,226 meters, but in 1990 the project had to be shut down due to an unknown explosion. Now China is striving to continue exploring the Earth's interior and plans to use its new borehole to study earthquakes and predict their occurrence. Another goal of the project is to gain a deeper understanding of the Earth's internal structure and its evolution. This opens up new opportunities for developing technologies and solutions that can be applied in various industries. Let's hope that China, with its modern technologies, will be able to find something interesting for the world of archaeology as well. The oldest pirate flag. The National Museum of the Royal Navy in Portsmouth features a unique artifact, a Jolly Roger, pirate flag captured off the coast of Africa in 1780. This flag with a red background served as a clear message to merchant ships: surrender or die. You can see traces of gunpowder and bullet-burned holes on its fabric. Around 1700, such flags began to be actively used by pirates. Initially, red was the dominant color, but over time pirates experimented, preferring other designs as well, including black flags. Richard Noyce, the museum curator, says that the image of pirates created by Hollywood is far from reality. In history, they were a dangerous threat to trade, not romantic movie heroes. Each pirate ship captain could choose his own design for his flag, but the most popular motifs became the skull and crossbones. The name Jolly Roger probably came from the French phrase Joli Rouge, which translates as pretty red, highlighting the original red color of the flag. Pyramids inside. A man in Turkey. A man was brought to the hospital with a suspected infection, but during the ultrasound, doctors saw something no one expected. There were 6 huge stones of perfectly regular shape in his bladder, one cube measuring 7 by 7 by 7 centimeters, and the rest were pyramids with a total weight of more than a kilogram. All of this was inside, yet the patient did not feel any pain. Later, it turned out that he had surgery as a child, after which his bladder became enlarged. The stones formed slowly over the years and took on an almost perfect geometric shape. This is one of the strangest urological cases in history. Everything was surgically removed, but the cube stayed in the archive. 3,600 years of silence. For thousands of years, the sand kept the secrets of ancient Thebes, today Luxor, until archaeologists once again looked beneath its centuries-old dust. In recent excavations near the mortuary temple of Queen Hatshepsut, scientists discovered a system of tombs up to 3,600 years old, and with them, portals into the life and beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. The work has been carried out with the participation of the Zahi Hawass Foundation and the Supreme Council of Antiquities of Egypt since the fall of 2022. Among the finds are bronze coins with the profile of Alexander the Great, children's toys made of fired clay, various ornaments, winged scarabs, and even carved beads. Here, a part of the Hatshepsut temple was also discovered, as well as rock-cut tombs from the Middle Kingdom and remains of the Asasif necropolis from the Ptolemaic period. The burial shafts date back to the 17th dynasty. In one of them, there was a wooden coffin with the remains of a child. All of this helps us to better understand how people lived, believed, and died. A special find is the tomb of Jehutimes, a courtier associated with Queen Tetisheri. The inscription indicates that the burial dates back to the 9th year of the reign of Yamas, Fursar. The war bows found here may suggest that the owner served as a warrior and fought during the expulsion of the Hyksos. In November of the same year, another tomb from the Middle Kingdom era was discovered nearby, containing 11 sealed burials. Archaeologists are confident that Luxor still holds many similar surprises. Every new artifact, whether it's beads or a battle bow, subtly lifts the veil on the culture and history of pharaonic Egypt. Long-distance trade. In the layers of pre-dynastic Egypt, archaeologists find items that physically could not have been made in the Nile Valley. In the burials and settlements from the end of the 4th millennium, BC beads made of lapis lazuli, obsidian blades, seashells, and rare types of stone have been found, materials that simply do not exist in Egypt. Lapis lazuli, for example, was mined in the area of modern-day Afghanistan. That's several thousand kilometers from the Nile. These items are found not just in one place and not as a rare exception. They appear in different regions of Upper Egypt, in the burials of high-status individuals, sometimes in sets that were clearly collected intentionally. Lapis lazuli beads have a similar size and shape. Obsidian tools were made using the same techniques. These are not one-time trophies or random finds, but items that regularly made their way to Egypt. Obsidian is especially telling. Its sources are in East Africa and Anatolia, and each piece can be easily identified by its chemical composition. Analysis shows that some of the obsidian in Egypt comes from regions hundreds and thousands of kilometers away. This material was not used for decoration. Cutting tools were made from it, and the traces of wear indicate its real use. Seashells are found in burials located deep in the Nile Valley, far from the sea. They were brought there already as finished ornaments or amulets. All these items are found in layers, where there were still no written sources or names of rulers. But the objects themselves record the movement of materials, people, and skills over distances that are hard to reconcile with the image of local and isolated communities. The tomb of an unknown pharaoh. In Egypt, near the city of Abydos, archaeologists found the tomb of a pharaoh that is about 3,600 years old. It is located 7 meters deep in an ancient necropolis known as the Mountain of Anubis. The tomb turned out to be almost empty. Most likely it was looted back in ancient times. The name of the pharaoh was written on the plaster at the entrance, but it has not survived to this day. Scientists suggest that it could be one of the lesser-known rulers. For example, Snape or Pangeni, who are mentioned in other sources but whose burials have not yet been found. The tomb dates back to the Second Intermediate Period, a difficult time in Egypt's history when the country was divided into several kingdoms and was in political chaos. One of these regional kingdoms was the Abydos dynasty. Its representatives may have been buried in this area. Interestingly, the new tomb is built into the complex of the earlier and more influential pharaoh Neferhotep. Architecturally, it resembles both the tombs of the Middle Kingdom and those from a later period. The Curse of the Terracotta Army. The magnificent Terracotta Army is one of the most amazing archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. For a long time, it remained underground, hidden from the eyes of humanity. This incredible discovery was made by accident by farmers in the 1970s in the city of Xi'an in northwest China. While they were digging a well, their shovels struck fragments of ancient pottery. No one could have imagined that beneath their feet was an entire army of 8,000 clay warriors. However, behind the beauty and grandeur of this archaeological wonder lies a dark secret. Legends say that thousands of workers who built this army were buried alive along with the statues to keep the location of the tomb a secret. Over time, many of those who tried to explore this place or even just touch the statues faced misfortunes and troubles. This gave rise to rumors about the curse of the Terracotta Army. Among the local people, there is a belief that the spirits of the ancient warriors guard their emperor and do not forgive any contact with their statues. All of this makes the story of the Terracotta Army even more fascinating and mysterious, reminding us that sometimes the past can return to remind us of its presence. And while millions of eyes gaze at the majestic statues of the warriors, somewhere deep inside, secret guardians continue to stand watch over the ancient mystery. A bucket from another world. In the Oseberg ship burial in Norway, archaeologists found a wooden bucket. The story could have ended there if the bucket hadn't been so unique. It was made of yew and decorated with bronze details, and a small figurine of a seated person with crossed legs. Because of this pose, the item quickly got the unofficial name, the Buddha bucket. However, it has nothing to do with Buddhism. Studies have shown that the bronze figurine was made in the tradition of Celtic monastic workshops of the British Isles or Ireland. Similar images are found in early medieval decorative art, and they probably go back to more ancient ritual motifs. The bucket turned out to be about 100 years older than the burial. Apparently, it already had a history before it ended up in the grave. It's also important that the bucket was empty. Yew wood is poisonous and not suitable for storing liquids, which makes its everyday use questionable. Archaeologists believe that the item had ceremonial significance. Melted steps. The staircase in the Temple of Hathor in Dendera raises many questions among archaeologists and researchers. These steps, located in one of the best preserved temples of ancient Egypt, look as if they were exposed to incredibly high temperatures, which could have caused their deformation and partial melting. Unusual bends and sunken areas can be seen on the surface of the steps, which are not typical for ordinary wear and tear of stone structures. There are various theories that try to explain this phenomenon. One hypothesis suggests that the steps may have been damaged as a result of some unknown thermal impact, such as ritual fires or processes related to ancient technologies. Another theory points to possible construction errors. If the stones for the steps were formed directly on site from a liquid mixture, then interrupting the hardening process could have led to an incorrect shape and softness of the material. Scientists are still studying this phenomenon, adding yet another mystery to the rich heritage of ancient Egypt. Champagne at the bottom of the sea, a May diving expedition near the Polish Hel Peninsula brought a double discovery. At a depth of 60 to 70 meters, Baltitech specialists, instead of the sought-after World War II submarine, came across two 18th century sailing ships lying 2 kilometers apart from each other. The first ship is loaded with green glass bottles and stone jugs. The analysis of the liquid is still ahead, but based on previous experience, some of the bottles are sure to contain champagne and natural mineral water from Celters. At that time, it was considered almost a medicine and was supplied to royal palaces, including St. Petersburg. The second ship was built a little later, at the end of the 18th century. The hull is fairly well preserved. The low temperature and weak currents of the Baltic slow down the decomposition of wood. Both objects are located directly under the modern shipping route, so raising them to the surface is unlikely. Archaeologists will use robots and photogrammetry. The discovery confirms the bustling trade between the Baltic, Northern Europe, and Russia long before steamships, and shows that the shallow seafloor remains an archive where commercial voyages turn into time capsules. Ancient Roman boxing gloves called cestus were not so much intended to protect the boxer's hands as to increase the damage of the blows. These combat accessories, reinforced with metal or bone inserts, could inflict deadly injuries. The only known surviving example of a cestus was discovered during archaeological excavations in the city of Pompeii, which was buried under a layer of ash and lava as a result of a volcanic eruption. This rare artifact is a remarkable testament to ancient Roman sports culture and the brutality of gladiatorial combat. The cestus is made of leather and decorated with inserts of lead and iron. Unlike modern boxing gloves, the purpose of this device was to inflict maximum damage on the opponent. Although modern boxing is considered a brutal sport, Roman fights using the cestus were much more dangerous and bloody. The legendary golden horse Medved. Not long ago, news once again spread on social media that near Anapa, Russia, the legendary golden horse of King Mithridates Eupator was allegedly found. It is noteworthy that similar reports had already appeared in 2021, turning out to be an April Fool's joke. However, new excavations in the village of Anapskaya have reignited discussion of this story. During rescue operations at the site of a future kindergarten, archaeologists discovered a burial ground about 2,000 years old. In one of the graves, they found not only human remains, but also those of a horse. In others, there were horse skeletons, glass and ceramic vessels, various beads, as well as weapons and harnesses. The items, including beads made of amber, carnelian, and faience, indicate the local tribe's connections with the ancient world. Among the finds, they noted a scarab, a symbol of rebirth for the ancient Egyptians. Particular interest was aroused by glass vessels, which became widespread throughout the periphery of the Roman Empire, thanks to advancements in glass-blowing techniques. Despite the excitement, there is no direct evidence that this is actually Mithridates' golden horse. Scientists emphasize that legends can easily grow, and the rich burial of a noble person can quite possibly acquire fantastic features over time. People without names. When talking about pre-dynastic Egypt, there is almost always a sense of emptiness, as if there is a fog between the stone circles of the desert and the first pharaohs. But archaeology sees settlements, rituals, and elites, complex burials, but it knows almost no names. This is strange because the things found in the layers from the end of the 4th millennium BC require coordination of power and memory of status. Such societies always have leaders, but these leaders seem to have intentionally vanished from history. In Hierakonpolis, archaeologists excavated the so-called Tomb 100, dated to around 3,300 BC. Its walls were covered with paintings depicting boats, processions, scenes of violence, and symbols of power. This is one of the earliest narrative images in the history of Egypt. Such a level of decoration is not found in ordinary burials and requires not only resources, but also people capable of organizing a complex ritual and overseeing its execution. In Abydos, in the el-Ka'ab necropolis, massive burial complexes from the end of the pre-dynastic period have been found, including the tomb of Uj, where hundreds of items made of ivory, rare types of stone, and the earliest known tags with proto-writing signs were discovered. These tags do not contain the names of rulers, but record territories, resources, and offerings, indicating the existence of centralized administration. At the same time, these burials lack what would become the norm just a couple of centuries later: royal titles, formulas of power, and clear identification of the ruler. Instead, symbols, animals, signs, and scenes of subjugation are used. Power is already present here. It is visible in the scale of the tombs and the amount of resources invested, but it is not yet personalized. Anatomical machines of Raimondo di Sangro. In Naples, in the basement of the San Severo Chapel, there are two exhibits that still stir up the imagination of visitors and scholars. These are the so-called anatomical machines, two skeletons, male and female, around which the circulatory system has been carefully reproduced. Arteries, veins, and capillaries entwine the bones, running through the head, chest, and limbs. For centuries, there were legends that the vessels were real, and the skeletons were the remains of people sacrificed for science. Anatomist Giuseppe Salerno, following orders from Prince Raimondo di Sangro, reportedly injected a special substance into his servants while alive, causing their blood to petrify and perfectly preserving their vessels. In reality, it's a bit more prosaic. The vessels are made of wax, wire, and silk. However, the precision is so great that experts today don't dismiss the idea that experiments may have been done on living people before the models were made. Prince Raimondo was an extraordinary person, an alchemist, inventor, and experimenter. He created fireworks that resembled architectural landscapes, forged jewelry, and supposedly invented an eternal flame that burned for 3 months. Once, next to the woman's skeleton, there was a third one, the skeleton of a fetus connected to the placenta. But in the 1990s, it was stolen. Nevertheless, the anatomical machines still amaze and frighten people, and that apparently was their purpose. The Sumerian myth about the trickster. In the storerooms of the British Museum, there was an unremarkable clay tablet, NI 12501, from the city of Nippur, modern-day Iraq. The age is about 4,400 years early dynastic Sumer. Recently, the Assyriologist Yana Matushak deciphered the text in the drawing, which is only visible under oblique light. This is a fragment of a myth where the main characters are the god lord Enlil, his son the storm god Ishkur, and the fox messenger. According to the plot, Ishkur ends up in the underworld. Rain disappears on earth, and the harvest withers. Enlil calls a gathering of the gods, but no one wants to go down after the captive. The volunteer is the fox, a small but agile creature. In the drawing, he is shown walking forward with his paws tied. This is a convention that shows his willingness to take risks. The continuation on another tablet has not yet been found, but the surviving lines describe how the fox deceives the rulers of the underworld. He pretends to drink their wine, but in reality hides in a jug, distracts the guards, and leads Ishkur out into the light. The story is one of the oldest examples of a trickster, a hero who uses cunning where strength is powerless. The tablet is important for linking climate fears to weather gods and showing that the clever fox was already used as a lesson at that time. In the city of Wuxi, China, archaeologists discovered the DNA of a person who lived here 6,000 years ago. These molecules were found in 2 tombs associated with the Meiji-Abang culture of the Middle Neolithic era. Until now, information about the inhabitants of this region was limited. However, thanks to these new discoveries, it has become known that the first people settled in Wuxi at least 6,000 years ago. During the research conducted since April 2022, more than 100 traces of ancient human activity have been found, including 2 tombs with DNA. Mysterious Stone Age holes. In England, archaeologists have discovered up to 25 mysterious pits, the purpose of which remains a mystery to this day. Imagine this: the English countryside in Bedfordshire, north of London, dotted with huge holes. Carbon dating of materials from this prehistoric site has shown that these round, sharply walled pits were created about 7,700 to 8,500 years ago during the Mesolithic or Middle Stone Age. This discovery, known as the Linmere pits, includes up to 25 pits each up to 5 meters in diameter and 1.9 meters deep. They are arranged in straight lines up to 500 meters long. The most amazing thing is that such monumental structures are rare for Britain of that time. Mostly we know about the Mesolithic period only from flint tools and the rare remains of hunted animals. Archaeologist Josh Pollard from the University of Southampton emphasized that the Linmere pits are remarkable for their number and the large area they cover. These pits are located where there used to be streams of water. Scientists suggest that they may have had spiritual significance or were even used to mark important celestial events, such as the solstice. Some of the pits contained animal remains, including bones of the aurochs, an extinct species of cattle, and may have served as food storage. Similar pits were found near Stonehenge last year, but the question remains, what were these pits created for? Full scan of the Titanic. For the first time in history, a complete digital 3D scan of the Titanic has been made. Hundreds of thousands of images were combined into a model that allows you to examine every inch of the sunken liner. The scan revealed many details that were previously inaccessible: destroyed decks, personal belongings, and individual structural elements. Experts paid special attention to the stern, the portholes, and the site where the hull broke apart. They discovered, for example, that one of the portholes matched exactly with eyewitness accounts describing the moment of the collision with the iceberg. The model also confirmed something important. Until the very end, the engineering compartment continued to supply electricity. This allowed the lights to stay on longer and gave passengers more time to evacuate. This matches the stories that the ship stayed lit until the very end. The scan provides more than just an image. It's a tool that allows us to study the Titanic as if it were on land, not at the bottom of the sea. And there's something especially strange about looking at something that perished with such clarity. Grain storage in the oasis. In the Fayoum oasis, far from the main Nile Channel, archaeologists found traces of a culture that existed roughly between 5,400 and 4,400 BC. It's called Fayoum EA. There are no large settlements or monumental structures here, but there is something that immediately stands out during the excavations: large grain storage facilities. These deep pits preserved remains of barley and emmer, which were stored in large quantities for extended periods. Such reserves cannot be explained by the random gathering of wild plants. Nearby, there are composite sickles with stone inserts fixed in wooden or bone handles. These tools are designed for regular work and repeated use, not for one-time experiments. Fayoum shows Egypt from a different perspective. There are no traces of authority here, no elite burials or ritual centers, but there is a clear understanding of the cycle of time and the need for planning. People grew, harvested, and stored food, planning for the future. This is one of the earliest forms of a sustainable economy in the region, which existed long before the emergence of statehood. $1 million to whoever deciphers the ancient script. The writings of the ancient Indus Valley civilization remain undeciphered to this day. Recently, Indian official Mudwell Karunanidhi Stalin offered $1 million for their decipherment. According to the Hindustan Times, this impressive reward is meant to inspire archaeologists, linguists, and cryptographers. The head of the state of Tamil Nadu reminded that over centuries of research, no one has made progress in understanding these mysterious symbols, which are presumably connected to the Tamil language. The strange symbols of the Indus civilization, discovered back in 1920 by Sir John Marshall, remain an unsolved mystery. It was at that time that Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were excavated, but the key to their script still has not been found. A medieval helmet on Mars. On August 5th, the Perseverance rover photographed a strange rock. In the photo, it looked like an old helmet, half buried in the sand. The top is pointed, the sides smoothly come together, and the surface is covered with many small spheres. Scientists named the find hornfly, and immediately noted that such a texture had not been seen on Mars before. These tiny spheres are mineral formations that appear through weathering, deposition, or the action of water. But on hornfly, there are so many of them that the entire surface looks as if it's covered with pearls. This can't be explained by ordinary erosion. It's possible that for millions of years, groundwater saturated with minerals passed through the rocks, and each drop left a trace. Or on the contrary, a stream of hot gases etched the surface, leaving scorched bubbles. The rover's instruments have already detected similar structures, but never in such quantity. On Earth, Such formations are typical for areas with active hydrothermal activity, places where underground water meets heat. If this analogy is correct, it means that not only was there moisture in the crater and lake, but also circulation similar to what supports life near underwater volcanoes. Currently, Perseverance is on the crater's northern edge, climbing sedimentary layers, like an archaeologist exploring ancient city levels. With each meter, it becomes increasingly clear. This helmet is not a random shape, but another reminder that the planet was not always a dead desert. The Tiara of Saitaphernes. For many years, the Louvre proudly displayed a golden tiara that supposedly belonged to the Scythian king Saitaphernes. The artifact's inscription stated it was presented to the king by the inhabitants of ancient Greek Olbia and appeared credible. However, behind its shiny appearance was one of the most notorious hoaxes in history. The story began in 1894 in Odessa when two antique dealers convinced a talented jeweler, Israel Rukamovsky, to make a diadem in the ancient Greek style for their archaeologist friend. Rukamovsky, not knowing ancient mythology, relied on illustrations from the books he was given. The resulting masterpiece, weighing half a kilogram, looked like a genuine artifact. Scenes from the Iliad, carefully engraved figures, and a solemn inscription praising the king. The Gokman sold the piece to the Louvre for a profit. They paid 200,000 francs for it. The deal was made, as people later joked, on April 1st, 1896. However, soon, some archaeologists, particularly Adolf Furtwängler, began to doubt the authenticity of the artifact. The Louvre, however, insisted otherwise, attributing the criticism to envy and political motives. The truth was revealed only in 1903 when Rukamovsky learned that his creation had become a museum relic. He came to Paris, personally reproduced a fragment of the diadem, and proved that it was a modern forgery. The Louvre had no choice but to admit its mistake. Afterward, the tiara entered the Hall of Forgeries, making Rukamovsky famous. His works became sought after, and the tiara incident became a key lesson for museums globally. An unusual lead coffin. In the north of Britain, archaeologists discovered the skeleton of a late Roman period aristocrat in a lead coffin, as well as the remains of more than 60 men, women, and children who lived in this region more than 1,000 years ago. This discovery may shed light on one of the key periods in British history, as researchers found representatives of both the late Roman and early Saxon periods with different burial customs. The find was made in Leeds, at a site discovered last year near Garforth. The location of the cemetery is being kept secret to protect it from looters. The cemetery was discovered in the spring of last year, not far from the site where late Roman stone buildings and Anglo-Saxon style structures had previously been found. Among the finds at the cemetery were burials with individual items such as knives and pottery, which indicate early Christian beliefs and Saxon burial customs. Chemical analyses can reveal details about the origin and diet of the buried individuals. After the analyses are completed, the lead coffin is planned to be exhibited at the Leeds City Museum as part of an exhibition on burial customs around the world. The Nazi Holy Grail. This artifact is becoming increasingly popular over time, especially in the context of studying the esoteric beliefs of the Nazi regime. It is true that a number of high-ranking Nazi leaders, including Himmler, were interested in the occult and mystical traditions. However, it is important to understand that most of the information on this topic is based on myths and speculation. Nevertheless, there is a theory that the Nazis really did search for the Holy Grail, hoping to use its mythical properties for their own purposes. Combined with the archaeological expeditions organized by the Ahnenerbe, the SS Research Institute, this theory becomes even more interesting. Some historians claim that one of the goals of the Nazi expeditions to Tibet and other regions was to search for relics, including the Grail, although there is no clear evidence of this. There is also an opinion that the Grail could have been located in southern France in the Cathar region, and that the Nazis conducted excavations there. This myth was further inflated thanks to popular culture, especially movies and books. In a number of works, the Nazis are depicted as chasing after sacred relics, including the Grail, to gain supernatural power or justify their ideology. However, scientific and historical research on this topic proves that although the Nazis were indeed interested in the occult and mysticism, Most of these claims are based on myths. Nevertheless, the idea that the Nazis might have been searching for the Holy Grail has become one of the most recognizable and exciting themes in modern pop culture. Priestess from Peru. Archaeologists in Peru have found the burial of a woman that is more than 1,000 years old. She was lying in a grave surrounded by important items, vessels, jewelry, and fragments of fabrics. These things indicate her high status. Most likely she was a priestess. The burial was arranged with attention to detail. Her body was carefully laid out, and around her were items related to rituals or worship. They helped preserve her memory and status even after death. This is not just a grave, it's a sign of respect and reverence. Interestingly, despite its age, this find is quite well preserved. The fabric, jewelry, even the bones, all are in good condition. The dryness of the sand helped preserve details that usually disappear over centuries. Ancient labyrinth. Modern remote sensing methods provide archaeology with new tools for understanding the past. One striking example is the study of the area around Rujum el-Hiri, an ancient complex of stone circles northeast of the Sea of Galilee. This mysterious monument clearly demonstrates how a satellite allows us to view the landscape from a completely different perspective. Scientists analyzed photos of the area within a 30-kilometer radius and discovered numerous megalithic structures, massive circles with thick walls, and mysterious flower-shaped enclosures near rivers. According to one hypothesis, all of them could have been elements of irrigation, defense, or livestock enclosures. In addition, the images show burial mounds of various shapes and sizes. They might be burial sites or signal mounds. And the results of geological measurements. It seems that the territory itself has shifted over the past millennium, which has cast doubt on the hypothesis about the astronomical purpose of Rujum el-Hiri. The satellite image captures the multi-layered construction, an archaeological palimpsest, where later structures were built on top of earlier ones. Such studies open the door to the distant past. By comparing satellite data, excavation results, and geophysical analyses, scientists hope to reconstruct the picture of life of the inhabitants of the Levant, and to better understand why they built such monumental stone labyrinths and surrounded them with complex agricultural systems. The Mysore King Electrician. The kingdom of Mysore, which is now part of Karnataka in southern India, its ruler Krishnaraja Wadayar IV went down in history not for his palaces, but for his reforms. He ascended the throne at the age of 11 and began to rule fully at 18. His personal fortune was estimated at $8.5 billion adjusted for today's money. But the luxurious diamond collections did not go into the treasury, but into development projects. The main step was the Shivanasamudra hydroelectric power station. In 1905, it was the first hydroelectric power station in Asia. It was because of this that Bangalore became a city with electric lighting earlier than many European capitals. When the construction lacked funds, the Maharaja sold part of the family jewels, including a diamond tiara, to complete the Krishna Raja Sagar Dam. He broke caste barriers, banned untouchability, child marriages under the age of 8, and introduced compulsory primary education. He gave a quarter of government jobs to those outside the priestly elite and funded education for widows and disabled children from his own money. Mahatma Gandhi called him a saintly king. Lord Curzon, the Viceroy of British India, noted, "If you want to see what modernization should look like, look at Mysore." When summing up in 1940, the British newspaper The Times wrote, "It is hard to find a ruler in the 20th century who is equal to him in the love of his people and the effectiveness of his governance." Diamond drills. 2,000 years ago, scientists made an amazing discovery. Ancient craftsmen were already using diamond drills to work hard stones 2,000 years ago. This became clear after analyzing 51 beads found in a burial site in Rabat, in what is now Uzbekistan. The burial dates back to the 2nd century BC to the 1st century AD and is associated with the UIG culture that existed in historical Bactria. The beads were made of carnelian, agate, and garnet, stones that are difficult to work with even using modern tools. Research using an electron microscope showed that 41 beads have traces characteristic specifically of diamond drilling. Moreover, the craftsman most likely first used a single drill to start the hole and then switched to a more complex tool with 2 diamond points. Previously, it was believed that the technique of diamond drilling originated in the Indus civilization, in the area of modern India and Pakistan. But now it is becoming clear that similar technologies developed independently in different parts of Asia. Interestingly, although such methods are also found in Tanzania, Uzbek beads are made using a special technique that has not been found anywhere else. Not your average housewives. On the west coast of Norway, in the province of Fitjar, archaeologists have excavated 3 early 9th century burials belonging to influential women. The graves turned out to be rich in luxurious jewelry and rare coins, indicating the high status of those buried. The items found are impressive in their state of preservation. One of the women was buried in a rock crevice and had jewelry, probably from England or Ireland, indicating the Vikings' extensive foreign connections. In another grave, 11 silver coins beads, textile tools, and a bronze key were found, the key being a symbol of family leadership and control over the household. A coin from Hedeby, minted in the southern part of Denmark, further confirms the complexity of the trade routes of that era. The luxury and variety of the artifacts found highlight not only the wealth of the local community, but also that noble women had significant influence in trade and crafts. The Lycurgus cup is a unique ancient artifact that combines high artistry with complex technical execution. This Roman glass cup, dated to the 4th century AD, serves as a vivid example of ancient glass-making craftsmanship. The cup's unique feature is its color-changing ability under different lighting. In reflected light, the cup appears green, but when light passes through it, it takes on a rich ruby red hue. This effect is achieved thanks to the gold and silver nanoparticles in the glass composition. The image on the cup is based on Greek mythology and tells the story of Lycurgus, who tried to kill Ambrosia, the son of Dionysus, the god of wine. In the image, you can see how the vines, created by the vineyard, entwine Lycurgus's body, depriving him of the ability to move. The Lycurgus cup is now kept in the British Museum. It serves not only as a magnificent example of ancient art, but also as evidence of the high level of knowledge ancient craftsmen had in the fields of chemistry and optics. New petroglyphs in Colorado. Archaeologists from Poland have discovered ancient indigenous paintings and reliefs on the border of Colorado and Utah in the USA. This team, which has been working for more than 10 years, studies the 3,000-year-old Pueblo culture. The research is being conducted at the Castle Rock Pueblo complex on the Mesa Verde Plateau. This place is popular among archaeologists and tourists thanks to the ancient settlements and rock art created by representatives of the Pueblo culture. The agricultural Pueblo communities developed one of the most advanced pre-Columbian cultures in North America, including the construction of multi-story stone houses and art. The team discovered previously unknown galleries and petroglyphs dating back to different historical periods. The oldest of them, depicting warriors and shamans, date back to the 3rd century AD. Most of the petroglyphs date back to the 12th, 13th centuries and include images of shamans, warriors, animals, and hunting scenes. In the 15th, 17th centuries, when the territory was inhabited by the Ute tribe, hunting scenes appeared on the panels. In later centuries, images of horses appeared, reflecting the changes. Research of the ravine led to the discovery of unknown petroglyphs at an altitude of 800 meters above the cliff settlements, which were used for astronomical observations and calendar determinations in the 13th century. A time capsule from the late 18th century in the USA. In West Point, specialists opened a mysterious box that had lain for 200 years at the base of a monument. Everyone thought there would be old documents inside, but there were only coins. The box contained old American coins and a commemorative medal. But even despite their age, each coin is worth only a few hundred or even a few $1,000s. Archaeologist Hudson was a bit upset, but still took the lead box to the lab, where he began analyzing its contents. After all, there could have been other mysterious objects lost to time, and although the box did not bring the expected discoveries, each find is a new fragment of history. A treasure with 1,000 coins. This story happened in Poland, where a local resident named Michał Lotes was searching for tractor parts on a farm with a metal detector. However, what he found made him very happy. It was a jug filled with 17th century coins. The treasure was found near the small village of Zaniówka in eastern Poland, close to the border with Belarus and Ukraine. Judging by the location where it was found, archaeologists believe it was deliberately buried around the second half of the 17th century. As I mentioned earlier, searching for ancient artifacts with a metal detector is not allowed in all countries. For example, in Poland, it is considered illegal. Therefore, the local resident immediately contacted archaeologists who have permission to conduct excavations. In total, there were 1,000 copper coins in the jug. We often hear that archaeologists find 500 coins, 1,000, or even 10,000, but we often don't understand whether that's a lot or not. In this situation, historical documents from the 17th century help the archaeologists. This way, the researchers were able to roughly estimate what could have been bought with these coins back then. In reality, a jug filled with copper coins is not actually that large of a sum of money. In the 17th century, you could buy 2 pairs of shoes with them, or possibly 20 gallons of beer. The silence of gold. In Egypt, new discoveries keep happening. This time, a standard find for this region was discovered, a tomb with mummies. But what was found in the mouth surprised some archaeologists. They were golden tongues. During the embalming process, the tongues were removed and replaced with golden ones, and all this was done so that the deceased could speak with Osiris, the lord of the underworld and judge of the dead, in the afterlife. He is one of the most important gods of ancient Egypt. While archaeologists have not yet announced the exact number of mummies discovered or how many of them had golden tongues, the excavations were carried out in a newly studied area of the Quesna Archaeological Complex, which includes ancient tombs from different periods. The complex consists of 3 levels, and each of them demonstrates different burial customs. Mummies with tongues wrapped in gold foil were recently found in Papyrus Magna, an Egyptian burial site that is 2,000 years old. A couple of years ago, archaeologists reported the burial of a man and a woman who were high-ranking people in ancient Egypt, and most likely they even communicated with Cleopatra. Unfortunately, scientists were not able to study their mummies thoroughly. Water had seeped into their tomb. However, the gold leaf that covered their entire bodies managed to survive. This confirms the fact that they belonged to the upper class. On land, only space compares. If there is anywhere on Earth where you can feel the breath of another planet, it is the Atacama, a strip of land squeezed between the Andes and the coastal Cordillera. Hasn't seen rain for 400 years. The air here is so dry that metal rusts more slowly than a person ages. But it is this absolute lifelessness that has made the desert the main laboratory for space. In San Pedro de Atacama, the air smells of sulfur and salt. During the day, the heat scorches the sand up to 40 degrees, and at night the temperature drops below 0. Silence, where even footsteps sound like gunshots. Everything here is made for looking up. At an altitude of over 4,000 meters, where the thin air rings like glass, giant antennas stand in a row. Alma Magellan, the Very Large Telescope. They capture light that traveled billions of years to reach us and break it into fine bands, like a researcher piecing together the universe's past grain by grain. When you look at these giant antennas, you feel that they are not like machines, but like living beings listening to the universe. Their aluminum ears catch the breath of stars, the cold rustle of intergalactic dust, and the echoes of distant bursts. In Atacama, a person is literally between 2 worlds, stone and space. Sometimes at night, local guides turn off the headlights, and the sky turns into a black dome speckled with millions of years. People stand in silence and watch as the Milky Veil rises over the mountains. At this moment, it becomes clear. If there is a place on Earth where you can hear the universe, it is here, in the place where only space sounds. A 1,000-year-old mummy. Have you heard about the latest archaeological discovery from the capital of Peru, Lima? Researchers have discovered a 1,000-year-old mummy. The discovery was made in the prestigious Miraflores district, where researchers found 2 ceramic vessels and ancient fabrics nearby. They say the mummy is connected to the Ixma culture, an ancient people who live south of Lima. Interestingly, Lima has already surprised us with such discoveries before. Recently, in the same place on top of the hill, another mummy was found surrounded by coca leaves. And the most interesting thing is that this place, Huachapuclana, is considered an archaeological gold mine. Scientists are sure that there are still many secrets waiting to be discovered there. Where did the ark stand? Shiloh, in the center of Israel, is called the main sanctuary of the era before the Jerusalem temple. Here, they excavated the foundation of a rectangular building measuring 31 by 15.5 meters with an exact 2-to-1 proportion and oriented strictly east-west. These are exactly the parameters described in Exodus for the portable sanctuary, the tabernacle, essentially a mobile temple tent. Inside, they discovered a massive partition dividing the space into two parts, the sanctuary and an isolated room similar to the Holy of Holies, where, according to biblical tradition, the ark was kept. The main evidence is not in the walls, but in the number of sacrifices. Over 100,000 bones of sheep, goats, and cattle, dated to around 1200 to 1000 BCE. In 97% of cases, the right side of the carcass is facing up. This matches the prescription in the book of Leviticus, where the right portion is given to the priest. Such a profile is not typical for an ordinary settlement, but is normal for a cult center with regular sacrifices. So far, this is not proof of the location of the ark, but archaeology provides what the text lacked: exact dimensions, orientation, layout, and culinary traces of the ritual. There are too many coincidences to see an ordinary courtyard here. This looks like the location of a sanctuary that for centuries was searched for only in books. 100 years underground. In the Czech Republic, archaeologists discovered an unusual treasure that turned out not to be ancient, but quite recent. It's only about 100 years old. A gold treasure hidden in the early 20th century was found in a village. Among the coins and jewelry, there are items that clearly do not belong to the Middle Ages, but to a later period. The treasure was found in an old building that once belonged to a family engaged in trade. When World War I began, their business collapsed, and the money was apparently hidden to wait out the hard times. But they never returned, leaving their treasure in an inaccessible place. Part of the gold, apparently, was collected from several sources. Coins from different countries, jewelry, rare metals. This treasure is interesting not only because of its value, but also because of the story behind it. It reminds us how people try to preserve their wealth when the world around them is falling apart. Many of these items are now on display in museums, and the treasure has become a symbol of lost hopes and destinies. Ancient Roman cellar in Germany. In March 2023, archaeologists in Frankfurt am Main made a truly sensational discovery. During excavations in the historic Hetternheim district, researchers came across a uniquely well-preserved fragment of a Roman house. A wooden staircase leading to the cellar, almost 2,000 years old. This seems incredible since wood is rarely preserved for so long, especially in an urban environment. Hetternheim is a district with a rich history. Once, the ancient Roman city of Nida was located here, founded during the reign of Emperor Augustus. Later, in 110 AD, Emperor Trajan made it the capital of the Civitas Taunensium region. The city flourished, with a population reaching 10,000 people, but already in the 3rd century, due to attacks by Germanic tribes, it began to decline and was eventually abandoned. In the 20th century, most traces of Nida vanished. Old houses were dismantled and cellars destroyed during construction. That's why the discovery of a wooden staircase and floor in a Roman cellar is a real miracle. The object was in excellent condition, and archaeologists decided to preserve it.
Самый старый мозг.
In one of the pre-dynastic burials in Egypt, archaeologists discovered something that almost never survives after a person's death: the remains of brain tissue. It belonged to a person buried in a simple pit, without embalming and without any treatment of the body. The burials date back to the end of the 4th millennium BC. Preservation occurred due to conditions, not ritual. Dry sand, high temperatures, and salty soil kept soft tissues from fully decomposing. Inside the skull, a dense dark mass was found, repeating the shape of the brain lobes. Analysis showed that this is altered but distinguishable nervous tissue, not sediment or contamination. It's important that the find is not connected to an elite burial. This is not a priest or a ruler, but an ordinary person. His brain was preserved not because someone wanted it, but because the conditions happened to coincide. This is one of the earliest known cases of human brain preservation, and a rare reminder of how chance sometimes preserves what people will later try to control consciously. Roman swords in Israel. In ancient caves near the Dead Sea, where the dry climate has preserved the secrets of past centuries, researchers from Israel made a remarkable discovery. In the depths of these caves, they discovered 4 Roman swords. Remarkably, 3 of them were still in their original wooden scabbards. The expedition was inspired by an ancient Hebrew inscription on a stalactite found 50 years ago. This inscription indicated the possible presence of ancient artifacts or objects of religious significance. According to experts from the Israel Antiquities Authority, Jewish rebels may have seized these swords from Roman legionaries 1,900 years ago and hidden them for later use in their struggle against the occupiers. The spathae that were found were indeed the primary weapons of Roman soldiers at that time. They had long, straight blades and were double-edged. The 4th sword, with a ring-shaped pommel, probably belonged to a pilum, an ancient Roman throwing spear. These swords are not just weapons, they are a testament to an era, a bridge between the past and the present. Such finds are quite rare, since iron is prone to corrosion, but thanks to the unique conditions in this region, historical artifacts have remained intact for centuries. She was afraid to touch it. Imagine going through your family's old belongings and suddenly finding a book that was checked out from the library back in 1927. This is exactly what happened to Jim Perry from California when he opened a box of his late wife's belongings. Among all that stuff, Jim found a book called A Soldier's Story of the United States, written by Benson Lossing. The book looked old, but when he saw the St. Helena Library stamp and the checkout date of 1927, he was amazed. He believed his father-in-law, John McCormick, had borrowed the book and never returned it. That was 96 years ago. According to the old library rules, the late fee was only 5 cents a day, but over such a long period, the amount grew to an astronomical $1,756. But don't worry. The library abolished late fees that year, so Jim didn't have to pay anything. Instead, he returned the book to the library, where it can now be seen in a glass case at the entrance. Chris Crichton, the library director, who has worked there for more than 30 years, said that this is the oldest book she has ever seen. "I was afraid to touch it," she admitted. According to her, the book was falling apart. History is literally all around us. Next time you go through old things, take a closer look. Who knows what you might find? Hand of Glory. Ancient magicians and shamans amaze and astonish with their ingenuity. Their knowledge of human psychology is especially inspiring. After all, not only did they manage to create certain magical objects, but they also made people believe in their miraculous power. One such example is the Hand of Glory. The first mentions of this terrifying thing date back to the 1600s, but those are only the officially recorded ones. To create this magical object, you needed the hand of a hanged criminal murderer. The most interesting thing is that I even have a recipe for making this creepy thing. You can write it down, just in case you ever need it. The hand must be cut off from the body of a hanged criminal, then pickled in salt and the urine of a man, a woman, a dog, a horse, and a mare. Then it needs to be smoked with herbs and hay for a month, hung on an oak tree for 3 consecutive nights, and then hung on a church door for 1 night. And if during this time no fear drives you away, the hand will be yours. According to another recipe, the hand had to be, so to speak, pickled in various ingredients. 2 of them are ponia and zemat. Fortunately, we still don't know the translations of these words. So what's the point of this hand? Well, it's simple. By performing a certain ritual using this hand, you can open absolutely any door on the planet. It's a kind of magical lockpick. Interestingly, there are even descriptions in history of supposedly real cases where such artifacts were used. In the 1873 book Curious Myths of the Middle Ages, there's a story told by a maid. During severe bad weather, a beggar appeared on the doorstep of an inn in the English county of Northumberland. No rooms were available, but he was allowed to sleep by the fireplace next to the maid. The woman woke up at night and saw how the guest took a dry human hand from the folds of his cloak, lit candles fixed between the fingers, and quietly muttered some kind of spell. After that, he calmly wandered around the hall, putting more or less valuable things into his bag, dishes, candelabras, and so on. The maid rushed to wake the master and the other servants, but they were in a deep, unbreakable sleep. Then she grabbed a jug of milk and poured it over the hand. The candles went out, and the sleep paralysis left the inhabitants of the house. Now, such hands are part of the exhibits in several museums, each with its own sinister story. The next find already had real value in the Middle Ages. Strange treasures of the Aztecs. Archaeologists believe that a new discovery found in Mexico City will lead them to the place where the main Aztec emperor rests. The lost imperial tomb has long fascinated scientists in South America. This is the main goal of archaeologists in this region. Just like in Egypt, they are trying to find tombs. The tomb of Cleopatra, which I talked about in a recent video. More than 500 years ago, priests hid Aztec sacrificial treasures near the steps of a temple in Mexico City. The cache includes the remains of a jaguar dressed in a warrior's armor, holding an eagle in its embrace. There were also many starfish and coral branches in the cache. All of this was kept in wooden boxes. Scientists believe that this offering was dedicated to Emperor Ahuitzotl, who ruled from 1486 to 1580. In the middle of one of the boxes, they discovered something solid, which they believe could be the cremated remains of the emperor. This find may become the greatest discovery of the 21st century. The discovery was made at a place now known as Templo Mayor, the main temple of the native Aztecs in their capital, Tenochtitlan. This temple was rebuilt 6 times. Each emperor sought to distinguish himself from his predecessor. Determining the temple's original construction date is difficult. Most likely, this is connected to the founding of Tenochtitlan in 1300. The main temple was as tall as a modern 15-story building. However, even here, the Spanish colonizers did their part and partially dismantled the temple. After its destruction, they used the stones for the Catholic cathedral. In addition to the large boxes with the jaguar and sea stars, there were smaller boxes. One of them contained Aztec incense. In another, there were 21 flint knives decorated with images of warriors, a miniature spear thrower, and a shield. Nearby, in a round offering, a boy about 9 years old was found. Most likely, he was sacrificed together with the jaguar. According to preliminary analysis, both had their hearts removed during the ritual. And all these excavations are concluded by a pit containing the skulls of children who were also sacrificed. The children were between 1 and 6 years old. As for Emperor Ahuitzotl himself, his cremated remains have yet to be found. This may take about a year. On one hand, you kind of feel happy about the archaeologists' new discoveries, but on the other hand, it's probably better not to know about all this. While archaeologists are trying to find the cremated remains, an unknown virus from the Paleolithic era has been discovered in Russia. Vitrified forts. In the mountains of Scotland, there are ruins that still spark debate among archaeologists. It appears to be an ordinary Bronze and Iron Age fortification, with stone walls, dwelling remains, and traces of campfires. But if you look closely, it becomes clear the stones are melted. Entire sections of the walls look as if they've been through a furnace. The rocks have fused together and turned into a single glass-like monolith. This is not the result of a fire. The melting point of sandstone is over 1,000 degrees. To achieve such an effect, you would need to keep a fire burning for several days, creating an enclosed space where the heat doesn't escape. Someone built these fortresses and then intentionally burned them, turning them into solid blocks. Experiments in the 20th century showed that such an effect can only be achieved through artificial control. Scientists Wallace Thornycroft and Vere Gordon Childe repeated the process. They set fire to a wall built from slabs with wood layers and covered in clay. After 3 hours, it collapsed, but some stone sections fused together. Later, it became clear that the temperature had to remain stable for several days with a constant supply of oxygen. In other words, this was a technology, not an accident. Someone, back in the times when metal was not yet in use, already understood how to control heat. Similar forts were later found all over Northern Europe. More than 200 places where stone was melted by people. No one knows why it happened at that particular time. But in this strange knowledge of fire that does not destroy, but binds, there is a sense of something too sophisticated for its time, as if this is not just ancient engineering, but a technology once passed down, the meaning of which we still cannot unravel. After all, we could see similar technology in ancient Egypt with the melted steps. A 3,000-year-old city emerged from the river. Iraq is one of the few countries that has been severely affected by climate change. The south of the country constantly suffers from drought. To protect the crops, the government uses water from the Mosul Dam for irrigation, which is considered the most important water storage in the country. The constant withdrawal of water helped to discover an ancient Bronze Age city from the Mitanni Empire era. The vast city with a palace and several large buildings could be ancient Zakiku, an important center of the Mitanni Empire. A terrible drought helped historians reveal an ancient city that was flooded more than 3,000 years ago. Now, archaeologists are trying to document the discovered site as quickly as possible before it is flooded again. In a very short time, archaeologists were able to map the city. Besides the palace that was visible from the water, they were able to see several large buildings and massive fortifications with towers. They also found something that looked like an ancient shop. One of the most important discoveries at this site was 5 ceramic vessels that contained more than 100 cuneiform tablets. After deciphering the script, archaeologists will be able to understand exactly what these buildings were, what role they played, and most importantly, how people lived in the empire. The cuneiform tablets date back to the Middle Assyrian period. To prevent further damage to this important site due to rising water levels, the excavated buildings were completely covered with tightly fitting plastic sheeting and filled in with gravel. This will help protect the ancient city from destruction for some time. At the moment, the reservoir is filled with water again, and the Bronze Age city has disappeared from human sight. And in Brazil, a very strange alien find has emerged from under the water. The treasure was hidden during the war. And once again, a random find by an amateur treasure hunter. This time, we're heading to the Netherlands. The treasure hunter found a magnificent collection of gold jewelry and silver coins in the swamp. They are still being studied, but archaeologists already believe that they are typical for the regions of Frisia. Curators at the museum in the Netherlands believe that they were hidden there about 800 years ago. Possibly buried during the war, the treasure consists of 4 gold pendants, 2 strips of gold leaf, and 39 silver coins. The discovery was made back in 2021 in the small northern town of Hoogwood in the West Friesland region. So far, archaeologists have not been able to determine the owner of these ornaments and coins, but one thing is certain. They belong to a very influential and wealthy person of the Middle Ages. Some believe that this was the property of the Countess of Holland. The minted silver coins come in different styles. Some of them were produced in the early 13th century. The newest coin dates back to the late 1240s, which coincides with a period of war. This explains why the owner buried these valuable items. A flute with the voice of a hawk. Now let's go to Israel, to the site of the ancient settlement of Einan Malaha. Here, under a layer of earth more than 12,000 years old, 7 unique flutes made from thin bird bones were discovered. Just imagine. These instruments were made by our ancestors from the bones of predatory birds. Moreover, scientists are sure that the choice of bones and the placement of holes in them were not accidental. Using them, you can produce sounds very similar to the cries of predatory birds. According to researchers, these flutes were not musical instruments, but were used for hunting. Einan Malaha is an ancient settlement of the Natufians, the first hunter-gatherers who decided to settle in this place. However, they continued hunting, fishing, gathering fruits and plants, and also learned agriculture and animal husbandry. Einan Malaha is located near Lake Hula, where migratory birds stop to rest. Based on the findings, the local inhabitants actively hunted waterfowl that wintered on the lake. These flutes had from 1 to 4 holes, which, just like in modern flutes, were covered with fingers. Some even had a mouthpiece. And around the holes, there are many scratches and marks, proving that the instruments were actively used. The researchers conducted an experiment, and they made the same kind of flutes from duck bones. The sounds they produced turned out to be very similar to the cries of birds of prey, kestrels, and sparrowhawks. It is assumed that with the help of these sounds, hunters attracted birds, and then used their claws and feathers for decorations. The oldest meteorite, Meet Erg Chech 002. Not just any meteorite, but a real great-grandfather from space. It is as much as 4.6 billion years old. It was found in the Sahara Desert, and it became a record holder as the oldest volcanic rock on Earth. This is an andesitic chondrite, one of the first cosmic inhabitants. Scientists from Australia decided to uncover all its secrets, to understand how planets were formed and what was happening in the solar system at the dawn of its existence. But our old fellow had a surprise in store. The isotope aluminum-26 was the main source of heat in the early evolution of the solar system. In addition, specialists usually determine the age of meteorites by its quantity. But it turned out that at the beginning of the solar system's existence, this aluminum was distributed unevenly, so the old methods of determining age are now not so accurate. This discovery has turned scientists' ideas upside down. Now, to find out the age of a cosmic object, a new approach is needed. Temple of Aphrodite underwater. Recently, researchers found a submerged temple dedicated to the goddess Aphrodite off the coast of Alexandria. This extraordinary discovery demonstrates how deep the connections between the ancient Egyptians and Greeks were. Such a find proves that Greek sailors and merchants not only visited Egyptian ports, but also left a part of their culture there by building temples in honor of their deities. Ceramic and bronze items found inside the submerged temple traveled to the ancient lands of the pharaohs from distant Greece. Recalling the history of Heraklion, the city lost beneath the waves of Abu Qir Bay, one can imagine how valuable this once thriving place was. It was a center of cultural and economic exchange between Egypt and the ancient world. Sunk in the waters of the Mediterranean Sea about 1,200 years ago, Heraklion continues to reveal its secrets, astonishing and amazing scholars from all over the world. As you can see, history is full of mysteries, and each discovery brings new findings and knowledge. We are grateful to the scientists and researchers who work on unraveling the past and allow us to look at it from a new perspective. I'm glad you were with me on this fascinating journey. Subscribe to the channel and a new video will be waiting for you soon. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.